Good evening. It is just past 6 o'clock here, and I will call this meeting of the Richland County Board to order and ask that the clerk take the roll, please.
Carroll, Miller, Brewer, Kramer, McKee, Hendricks, Manning, Gill, Glassburner, Harwick, Woodhouse, Turk,
Here.
Cosgrove, Frank, Severson, Williamson, Huey, Fleming, Brookins, and McGuire. You have a quorum.
I would ask that you please rise and join us. We don't have a physical flag in the room, so we're going to project a flag on our screen over here if you would face it for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I will ask the county clerk, are we in compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the meeting's been properly noticed.
Thank you very much. Board members, you have before you a 9-point agenda. I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Motion from Mr. Cosgrove. Do you have a second? Second from Mr. McKee. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And we have our agenda. So I want to welcome board members and community members to tonight's meeting. We're very pleased that you all accepted our invitation to come together tonight. We don't have a ton of items on the agenda, but we know that the conversations we're going to be having are important. This is a meeting of the county board, and we'll be conducting it as such. We are connected online, so the virtual folks can listen in too. We want to encourage participation. So if virtual folks have questions, our MIS staff will be tracking those and getting them to us so we can bring them to the floor as well for answering. Before we get into stuff, I would ask that you please silence your cell phones so we don't have interruptions during the meeting. Also would note that if you need to use the restroom, you have to go out the double doors over here, because if you go out the small single door, it locks behind you. So if you can go out that way, you just can't get back in that way. So with those notes, you'll see on our agenda, we have a couple of items of discussion first, and then we'll be moving into our question and answer time. So it is my pleasure at this time to introduce one of our special guests here, Attorney Andy Phillips from Atoll's Law Office, also affiliated with Wisconsin Counties Association. And I will hand the mic over to Andy once he gets out front here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, members of the community. I'm coming hot off the County Association Conference in La Crosse, where we had a lot of discussions about roles and responsibilities in county government. The chair asked me to spend a few minutes providing an overview of the discussion in La Crosse tonight, because it sort of sets the stage for the broader discussion about the form of government here in Richland County and what it is the role of the Board of Supervisors is, and what it is as policymakers you all do. And I think it's good for the community here. That's frankly, the community doesn't often have access to discussions about the particular roles and responsibilities within county government. So it's awesome that the broader community is here to listen to that as well. So I don't know that we have a clicker, or at least I could click and then you could move it. If I say click, you can advance. So click. You can't hear me? Is that better? Okay. I just have to hold the microphone closer, I guess. Don't ask me to sing. Click. And the next slide, please. All right, let's start with a discussion about county structure. Let me back up a second too, for those of you who don't know who I am. I'm new to many of the board members here who are newly elected. I'm an attorney that practices with Atoll's Law. We have a firm in Milwaukee. My partner, Matt Tome, is here as well. As I mentioned, we spent a lot of time at the Counties Association Conference discussing different issues associated with county government. We're privileged to serve as legal counsel for the Counties Association, and we also represent counties across the state. I've been doing that for 29 years, and so I often get asked to provide perspective on my observations within county government, some things that work, some things that don't work so well. and essentially take a look at the organizational structure of county government, because county government is different than any other level of government. If you think about our federal government, we have the United States Constitution, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, clear separation of the branches of government. If you look at our Wisconsin Constitution, we have the same separation right there in the Constitution as it relates to the various branches of state government. Even if you go to Chapter 62 of the statutes, there's better clarity in terms of the way that a city or a village would operate in terms of the branches of government. If you go to Chapter 59 of the statutes, which governs county authority, there is no clear definition of the various branches within county government. Doesn't mean they don't exist, and it doesn't mean that we don't have guidance in terms of the way we operate as counties. It's just not as crystal clear as we have with some other levels of government. And so again, our authority comes from Chapter 59 of the statutes. We're different than cities and villages in that cities and villages have constitutional home rule authority. They have the ability as cities and villages to govern at the local level the way that they see fit. As counties, we have statutory home rule authority, but again, we exist for the benefit of the legislature, and the legislature can tell us as counties what we can do and what we cannot do. So we have administrative home rule authority. Every county in Wisconsin, all 72, is governed by a board of supervisors, and that it ranges in size from 7, that's the smallest board in the state, and 38 is the largest board in the state. Next slide. I mentioned administrative home rule authority, 5903 sub 1 of the statutes and 5951 sub 3 of the statutes. That's okay, we can just skip over that because that's essentially the statutes. Essentially, they say that as counties, we have the freedom to organize ourselves any way that we see fit, subject only to a legislative matter of statewide concern. So what does that mean? That means if the state says every county has to do something a certain way, we have to do it a certain way here in Richland County too. But if the statutes are silent, or if the statutes give us discretion, we have the ability as a county to organize the way we see fit. One of the choices that we have as a county is we can choose to be a county executive county, an administrator county, or an administrative coordinator county. Next slide. If we look at the executive model, it's very similar to what the state government is, and you don't have an executive here in Richland County, nor do I think you want one. The executive model is 12 of the most populous counties within the state of Wisconsin. If we look at the way counties are organized currently in the map, we've got 33 counties that have appointed county administrators, 12 counties with elected county executives, and then we've got 27 where there are administrative coordinators that serve in varying capacities. Richland County is a county administrator county. Next slide. We can skip through the county executive slides. I'm sorry, I'm going to have you keep going here. County administrator counties, 59.18 of the statutes. It's an option for counties of population 750,000 or less, which is essentially every county other than Milwaukee County, appointed by majority vote of the county board. That's very important. And you understand this because you have Administrator Pesh that was appointed by you to serve as the county administrator. Your county administrator is accountable to this county board. There is a clear line of authority that goes from the county board to your administrator, and your administrator serves at the pleasure of this county board. If you feel that your administrator is not doing a good job in carrying out the policy directives that you as a board establish, you have the opportunity to ask Ms. Pesh to exit that position, just like every other administrator in the state of Wisconsin. So what is it that we are asking our administrator to do in Richland County? Serves as the chief administrative officer of the county. Takes care that every county ordinance and state or federal law is observed, enforced, and administered within the county. Next slide. Coordinates and directs management functions of the county, appoints, removes, and supervises department heads subject to board confirmation. That's an important feature here in 59.18. Because remember when I said there's a clear line of authority between this board and your county administrator? There is no line of authority between the board or any committee and a department head or staff member within county government. The line goes through your county administrator. And that's oftentimes difficult to really absorb when we've got a situation like I know is here in Richland County where you transition from administrative coordinator to county administrator not that long ago. All right. In the administrative coordinator model, it's not as clear in terms of that line of authority, but in 59.18, dealing with the administrator, you have one employee, and that's your county administrator. If you have concerns about a department head, you have concerns about staff, you address those through the county administrator. And to me, that's a lot more efficient. You've got one employee that you worry about, all right? That means your employee's gonna be very busy. I get it, but that's one employee that we have to worry about as the county board. Next slide. And so again, your administrator appoints members to boards and commissions, subject to board confirmation, submits an annual budget to this board, and so on. Next slide. Qualifications for appointment. This isn't an elected position. Your administrator doesn't have to be a resident of the county, all right? We are appointing a person as administrator based solely on their qualification to serve as the county administrator. And that's important. I think personally that when we look at the county administrator form of government here in Wisconsin, it's most similar to what we see in the private sector with a private corporation. For example, in a private sector corporation, we have shareholders of a company that elect a board of directors, and that board of directors appoints a CEO to run the company. If for some reason the CEO isn't performing, the board of directors has the authority to remove that CEO. If the shareholders don't like a member of the board of directors, they have the ability to unelect a member of the board of directors. Same that we've got here with the constituents voting for you, putting you on this board. You, this board, appoint your county administrator who serves you as the county board. Next slide. I already talked about removal for conduct unsatisfactory, so we'll go to the next slide. I'm sorry, I'm making you do a lot of work, Barbara, because I'm trying to get through this. I know we got a lot of people who want to talk. And then we have the administrative coordinator statute. That again is not very well defined in the law in terms of what an administrative coordinator's role is. For those 27 counties that do have an administrative coordinator, all 27 do it a little bit differently. Can't say that about the 33 administrator counties. Every administrator county follows 59.18, but the statute that we see in 59.19 allows counties to have an awful lot of discretion in defining what it is that an administrative coordinator will do. Next slide. So what does the county board do? What's the role? What's the function of the county board? Supervisors serve in a legislative capacity. It's limited to policy making, lawmaking, budgetary approval, cooperative decision-making. No operational control resides with any individual board member or board supervisor. That's very important. Next slide. So when we think about the county board of supervisors, do you actually supervise anything? I don't think so. It's a historical term. It's not meant to connote some sort of superintendent authority over any aspect of county operations. You operate as a legislative body within Richland County government. Next slide. So I like to think of the county board as having two roles. First role is to adopt policy. All right, you enact policy. But then you take that policy and you charge your administrator and staff with carrying out that policy. So you want to hold them accountable for implementing policy consistent with the direction that you give them. So you adopt policy, that's one role. And second, you hold people responsible and accountable for carrying out that policy. That's your second role. Our aspiration ought to be called, we ought to be called visionaries. We ought to be proactive in our approach and how to deal with these issues. Next slide.
Is there anything more down here about it?
This is a fantastic sample county board rule from Chippewa County. And it's not as though Chippewa County does everything perfect. That's not my point. My point is I really liked having this board rule on the books in Chippewa County to define the role of the county board and define the role of the county administrator. Role of the county board is to set the strategic mission and priorities for the county, establish the general policies by which the county is guided in its management of county affairs, consider and act upon resolutions and ordinances, provide financial oversight, and build community relationships in support of the mission and priorities. The board appoints the administrator and monitors the administrator's management of the daily operations and implementation of policy. Again, that speaks to the dual role of the county board of supervisors. Next slide.
Down till number 7, look.
County board chair has a job as the shepherd that oversees the legislative process within the county. Again, no individual operational authority resides with your county board chair. Your county board chair is the head of the legislative body in county government. Next slide. Committees. This is a very important feature within county government. 59.12 of the statutes, 59.13 allows for the creation of committees that this board feels would be helpful in assisting you in your policy development mission. We had a robust discussion about committee structure in Richland County just 6 months ago. That robust discussion ended up with revamping committee structure within the county, recognizing that we expect the committees to do a lot of heavy lifting and policy development work so that there is a solid recommendation that comes back to the board that we know that a proposal has been fully vetted at the committee level. And that's what should be happening, frankly, is the committees have a very difficult and important job in ensuring that a proposal has been fully vetted by the committee, by the community, by all stakeholders before it ever gets back to the county board. Next. So again, counties are structured. If you look at chapter 59, if you look at the way the counties operate, the way the counties govern themselves, committees play a very important role here, and committees are involved in both roles of the county board. Assist in policy development and then also assist in the accountability feature, because the committees ought to be the first ones to know if we have an issue with a particular department, with our budget, with performance, with our policy direction and things of that nature. Those are the committees that would know that information to take it back to the county board with a recommendation. Next slide. Administration, our county administrator, our department heads, our staff, vastly different role than what we have for the county board. Our administrator, our staff here in Richland County, we don't want them to be visionaries unless we tell them to be visionaries. We want them focused on the day-to-day operations in county government. We want them focused on the shorter term in terms of getting things done here in the county. Requires specialized training and absolute attention to detail. Next slide. So I think staff is having two roles. County board has two roles, staff has two roles. Number one, staff carries out the policy direction that this board provides. And then second, staff has an obligation to give you the information necessary to make informed policy decisions, okay? So if we focus on the role of the board as being policy development and accountability for the people who have to implement that policy, and we focus on the roles of staff as saying they carry out the policy direction the board establishes, and provides information to the board to make informed policy decisions, it's really simple and an easier way to think about roles and responsibilities in county government. Next slide. And so we look at the qualifications of county staff compared to county board supervisors. And if we look at what we are looking for example, let's say that Richland County was going to hire a new highway commissioner. Think about the help wanted ad, and I know I'm dating myself by saying that, but the help wanted ad for a new highway commissioner in Richland County, we're going to ask that somebody have some sort of education. We're going to ask somebody be credentialed, that they have some sort of relevant experience, that they're up to date with their professional associations. In other words, we want the best and brightest person to run our highway department, all right? Because that's staff. They have an obligation to carry out policy direction. They have to focus on the detail. But then think about what the help wanted ad looks like for county board supervisor. What are the qualifications to be a county board member? Go ahead. What are they? You have to be over 18. You have to be over 18. You have to live in your district. You can't be a felon who's lost the right to vote. That's a rather inspiring help wanted ad, isn't it? But what's the most important qualification to be a county board member? The singular most important qualification to be a county board member. You got more votes than the other guy. All right? And that's the way it should be. You are there representing your constituents. You are there in a representative capacity, voice to the citizens who elected you to sit in this seat. So I don't want to see all sorts of qualifications placed upon the position of county board supervisor. I want it wide open so that people have the ability to elect who they want to sit in that seat. That's a very important concept. And when we think about that, all right, and think about that in the context of the role of the county board and the role of your county administrator, department heads, and staff, isn't it important that we have a connection to our constituents to implement policy in a manner consistent with what our constituents want? Isn't it important to our constituents that we ensure that our staff are carrying out the policy direction that we as a board establish? And then with staff, isn't it important that we hire the best and brightest to carry out that policy direction? And is it important that we have staff that is really bright to give us information necessary to make policy decisions? Absolutely. Next slide. So we have leadership roles within county government, but it's all through delegated authority established through policy emanating from the county board. We have a personnel handbook in the county, and that personnel handbook within the county governs how we deal with personnel situations within the county. That policy is established by the board. That doesn't mean the board gets involved in every personnel function within county government. No, we have an administrator to carry out that function, and we also have other staff that assists the administrator in carrying out that function. But we set the policy direction. If we say that you have to go through some sort of disciplinary process in order to terminate an employee, as a board, we set that process. We say that's our policy, and that's what the administrator has to follow. Next slide. And just so you don't think I'm making all of this up, there is actually one court case out there that has dealt with the distinction between the policy-making function in county government and the administrative function or executive function within county government. And I'm not going to read to you from the Schutte versus Van de Hey case. If we could go back a slide. I said I wasn't going to read it, but that didn't mean you should advance. I didn't click. I love the last sentence here. This last sentence, straight from the court decision, is awesome. It says, the crucial test for determining what is legislative and what is administrative has been said to be whether the ordinance or policy is one making a new law or policy or one executing a law or policy already in existence. So the Schutte versus Van de Hey case, I said that's the only case that went up. There's another case that went up to the Court of Appeals, but it dealt with Milwaukee County. And as with everything with Milwaukee County, there are special rules for Milwaukee County. So this is the only non-Milwaukee County case that's gone up. This involved a dispute between the Outagamie County Board and the Outagamie County Executive. What happened is at the airport, the Outagamie County Airport, there was land surrounding the airport that was eligible for agricultural use. And the county board said, hey, we want to lease this property out to a local farmer so that they can farm this land. County executive said, nope, we're not going to do that. That's a hazard. That's a danger to airport operations. It was fine through FAA and state regulation. So this purely was a decision by the county executive to say, I don't think it's safe. All right. They couldn't figure out how to resolve that dispute, so they sued each other. Who do you think won? How many people think the county board won? How many think the executive won? How many are just waiting for me to tell you? County board won that dispute. It's a policy decision as to whether we lease that property around the airport. Here's the kicker. Guess who negotiates the lease? And that's an example of baked-in conflict in the statute. It's baked in there because a lot of times these disputes aren't capable of resolution, and that's okay. That just means we have to figure out a way so that we can move forward as county government to efficiently and effectively deliver services to our citizens. Because I bet if I ask the crowd behind me here, if they care who won that dispute, there might be one or two curious hands that go in the air, but most of them are going to say, why should we care about that? We just want to make sure we get our services efficiently. We want to make sure that our taxpayer dollars are invested wisely by this board of supervisors. All right. So again, I think it's a cautionary tale in saying, don't let it get to a court case. Let's try to have these discussions about roles, responsibilities, and having a discussion about how we most effectively deliver services to our residents. Next slide. Now you can advance, click. So what happens if we lose the distinction between policy and administration? What happens when we have a breakdown in an understanding of roles, responsibilities within county government? Well, there are all sorts of things that might happen. And I bet that those bullet points, there are probably some of those that ring true in Richland County. I'm not sure if there are or there aren't, but I highlighted one bullet point. I put it in red font. We're reactive instead of being proactive. Is a visionary reactive or proactive? A visionary is proactive. We want to solve problems before they ever get to the county board. We want to provide our staff with adequate policy direction so that they have the ability to operate and resolve these issues without having to invest board time on these issues. That's what we want to see happen. Next slide. So if we look at our organizational chart here in an administrator county, again, we have a clear line of authority between administrator and county board, and then department heads and county staff. It doesn't mean that we don't have interaction between boards, committees, and department heads or staff. We do, because remember, the second role of staff is to provide information to the board to make good policy decisions. But the employment relationship, the oversight, the managerial functions are governed through the county administrator. Next slide. So again, we ought to view this as an opportunity. This discussion ought to be the beginning of a conversation about how we work together as a goal, so that we are doing our jobs as a board, staff is doing their job as staff, and the community has faith that the board and staff are all working their tails off in the best interest of citizens of Richland County. Next slide. Why don't we go to the next slide too? I think I'm about done. I have a couple of takeaways that I wanted to mention. Next. Next. All right, so here are the takeaways. Key points to remember. We're creatures of the legislature. We're creatures of the state. We can only do what the statutes and Constitution allow us to do. We don't have independent authority like municipal government does. We serve as a county board in a legislative capacity. We adopt annual budgets. We establish policy through resolution and ordinance. We have a strong committee system in place that's going to assist in the policy development function that this county board undertakes, and that we're going to do what we have to do as committees to make sure that the county board is well informed. Next slide. Individual county board members have no management or leadership role outside of committees or commissions as the head of a legislative body. Administration, department heads, they implement the policies and procedures that the board establishes. Micromanaging stifles productivity of county operations. And all of you are looking at me like, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no doubt. I see that word micromanagement thrown out a lot when I travel around the state and visit with different counties. And I've been in situations where I will have a county board seated like this, looking at me, and then I've got staff behind the county board. And I say to the county board member, how many of you think that you micromanage staff? And there might be one or two hands that go up, sometimes no hands. Okay. And I say, don't turn around. Now, staff back there, how many of you think that the county board or individual supervisors micromanage you? And you will see every hand shoot up into the air quicker than you've ever seen anything. Does that mean that there's a micromanagement problem? Not necessarily. And I say that because what they may view as micromanagement is merely exercising your accountability function. Remember, you have a role as the county board to hold staff accountable. And so does that mean we want to have a conversation with staff, with our administrator, about what is micromanagement? And are we really stifling the ability of our county employees to get their very important jobs done? Let's have that conversation, all right? And so if we work cohesively as a team, our county administrator, our department heads, county board, committees, we're a team. Cooperatively, we provide the best chance of success in meeting the needs of county residents, and that's why we exist, period. So we ought to be doing everything that we can to do that. Now, I have sped talked through an hour-long discussion, all right? And I'm doing that, again, out of respect for the community that's here that wants to provide input to you on these very important issues. I think this is an important discussion to continue. And to the extent the Counties Association can come and assist with those discussions, we are happy to do it. What we don't like to see as a counties association, what I don't like to see as a lawyer representing counties, is all sorts of disputes about who is making what decision when. That is not a dispute that the public cares about. I would rather resolve those disputes so that we can get down to the very important issues that are impacting our residents. And that ought to be our aspiration, is to make sure that we have a fundamental understanding of roles and responsibilities in county government so that we can get to the very difficult work of policy development and implementation. Next slide. So I'm happy to take questions if anybody has any questions, but let me end by saying this. Thank you for what you do. I know that this isn't an easy job, and frankly, I've seen your paychecks. You're not doing this for the money. I get it, all right? So thank you for what you do on behalf of the Counties Association and me as a lawyer who represents county government. Mr. Chair, did I miss anything? Because you sat through an hour of this morning already. It was okay? All right.
Board Members have any questions for Andy related to his presentation? Yes, Supervisor, I'll give you the microphone.
Yeah, I have a question about closed door sessions. Like, if you're on this board, are you allowed in every closed door session that they have, whether you're on that committee or not?
I would defer to Corporation Counsel on that specific question because it's unique to Richland. Mike, did you want to handle that one?
So by the adoption of Robert's Rules of Order in our rules of the board, there is an exclusionary authority granted to the chair of a given committee. The members cannot be excluded from a meeting of the body as a whole, regardless of if it's closed or not, but closed sessions of committees, anyone who is not a member of the committee may be excluded.
So I didn't quite catch that. So
So your board rules say that we are incorporating by reference Robert's Rules of Order as our rules of procedure. Those rules of procedure have a provision that say that a member can be excluded from a committee meeting, not a board meeting, but a committee meeting. And so through the incorporation of those rules of procedure, you do have the ability to exclude somebody from a closed session.
meaning like if I'm at a closed door session and I'm not on that committee, I cannot be allowed to be in that closed door session?
That's a lot of negatives in that statement, so let me try to say this. The answer is you can be excluded by that committee if you're not a member of the committee. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other board members with questions for Andy? A lot of information in a short period of time. As he said, it was an hour at the conference presentation. If there was more discussion of other forms of government than just administrators. So thank you for making the trip here and sharing with us on your way back from the conference. So we appreciate that. All right, moving on with our agenda. The next item is discussion of specific county topics, including Pine Valley Ambulance Service, and we'll start with the cybersecurity incident. We know that's what a lot of people have been most interested in recently, and so I'll ask Administrator Pesch to come forward and share the latest information we have with you on what we know, what we don't know, that kind of thing.
So I know this has been a big concern for many of you, as it was for us as well. I did hand each of you, hopefully, we had this created. This list of questions are the most asked questions that I've had in the past week. I've had many, many phone calls. I've had many, many people stop into my office, and hopefully that has helped clarify and bring light to this situation. You know, as the letters that went out said, you know, we had an incident. It took several months to adequately investigate. We had a cybersecurity firm that are a team of specialists that handled everything from start to finish. We were advised every step of the way by a legal team and cybersecurity experts on all of the steps we were to take and when we were to take them. And so that hopefully will answer a lot of the questions, this handout here. But if we have additional questions on the cyber incident, we will answer them to the best of our ability. What I will say is there are things that we cannot discuss publicly. There are things that we would not want out in the public forum, vulnerabilities that could be created by having some of those discussions. And so some of the answers that you may seek, we may not be able to provide for you. It's not that we're trying to hide or cover up anything. It is because of the fact that we are being advised by our legal team what we should and should not discuss, especially in a public forum. So that's the update that I have.
And we will take questions on that when we get to our question and answer time. If people have specific questions, again, acknowledging we may not be able to answer all your questions. All right. The second thing we wanted to say a little bit about Pine Valley. It's been a topic of conversation for a lot of folks. If you go back in time, we had an investigation that took place at Pine Valley. I will hand the microphone off here to Corp Counsel Wendell to talk about that aspect of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a while back, we received a complaint from an employee, which triggered an investigation into what became the entirety of Pine Valley operations. I've spoken several times on the results of that investigation, published a public version of that report that resulted from that investigation. I will echo something that Administrator Pesh said when it comes time to questions. We cannot discuss individual personnel. And so if there are any questions about, did this person do this? What happened with this person? That's not something that we're going to be able to answer. The summary is that there were managerial, cultural, and operational hindrances within the Pine Valley operation towards changes that the county was looking to make. Since there has been a shift in Pine Valley, we've seen some really positive changes. We've been able to find out about and then address concerns that we were not aware of previously. The elephant in the room, and I can speak to someone who it has been the subject of public reporting, is the former administrator. As many of you may know, that she, subsequent to her departure from the county, was subjected to arrest for charges of making false reports to the police, fabricating threats against herself. That was all one of those things that I can't get any further into, but I can say that those behaviors were not known to us during the course of her employment, and it was only subsequent to that all came out.
And what we can tell you about what's going on at Pine Valley now, we have an interim administrator in place. We have seen success in hiring staff to the point the facility is now fully staffed, which is wonderful. We have seen an almost 100% reduction in our use of temp staff, which were very costly to the county, to the tune of about $750,000 in 2023. Through working through scheduling and staffing issues, we've been able to almost eliminate that. Not quite, but almost. The budget for 2025 for Pine Valley is looking very good. So there's a lot of good news out there now, and we're very happy about that. The third thing we had listed on our agenda is the topic of our ambulance service. There's been a lot of people talking about various issues and questions, and what we can share with you about the current status of our ambulance services. We are, again, fully staffed. They have been able to successfully hire some new EMTs, even an advanced EMT and a paramedic. Is that right? Awesome. So we're very happy about that. Calls are being answered. Nothing is going unanswered. We have some challenges moving forward, equipment-wise, things like that we're going to have to figure out. Mike, did you want to share something? Or
Computer? Oh, I think it
Thank you.
lasts.
I appreciate everybody's attendance tonight.
Who's
Again,
Barb
to
was stopped?
reflect what the chairman, sorry, my name is Mike Jessen. I'm the Chief of Emergency Services for Richland County. I oversee Richland County EMS as well as the Office of Emergency Management. I started in this position on May 28th of this year. That first week was not a great week. And as is well known publicly and posted regularly on social media, there were 2 employees that were terminated my first week. I can't speak to that cause, but it's not something that was taken lightly, something that was done haphazardly. And I can assure you, standing before you, that as much benefit of the doubt and due process was given beyond what was required. In the time since, towards the end of August, I received resignation letters from a total of 4 staff. That include 3 full-time staff as well as 1 part-time staff. I can't speak to their reasons. I know that each and every one of them has their own story, and it's not my role to speak to them. What I can speak to is the incredible people we have in place with Richland County EMS now. They stepped up to the plate when we were really behind the 8 ball. When I was setting the September schedule going, how in the heck are we going to cover this thing and make sure an ambulance is available to our community 24/7? No questions asked. These folks stepped up. They worked 3-4 days in a row. We ate together. We cried together. We laughed together. We got through it. I'm happy to announce that for the month of September, we have a total of 16 open hours on the schedule. That's this coming Saturday, and if that's not filled, I myself am going to work it. Therefore, we've had no open coverage days in the month of September, and we have responded to every 911 call we have been dispatched to. Furthermore, when I started here, our average response time from the time that the tone goes off from dispatch saying, hey, you have a call, to the time that we got out the door, the average there was about 2.9 minutes. Though staffing was decreased for a time there in August, though we were doing everything we could with a bare bones skeleton crew, I'm happy to inform you for the month of August and the month of September, our average response time is 90 seconds from the time we are dispatched to the time we are on the road, on the way, ready to come solve your problem. I cannot thank again the staff enough that have stepped up and made it possible for us to continue to provide the service each and every one of you sitting before me today deserve. I'm also happy to announce we no longer have any full-time vacancies. We have hired multiple full-time staff since the departures of others. I've got 2 full-time applicants currently. I had to say, I'm sorry, we're fully staffed. And I've got multiple part-time applicants on standby as well. I understand from the outside, things did not look good, and I understand the concerns of the community. And I'm sorry that you had to have that concern, whether or not an ambulance is going to show up when you call 911. But you have my promise and you have my word. An ambulance will be there for you if you need it. And if there is a risk at all, there will not be one. You'll hear that from me before it's a surprise. I do afterwards, after Q&A, I've got some business cards. If anybody would like to speak with me a little bit more, I'm happy to oblige that, but that is the current update on the ambulance service.
Thank you, Mike. So as I said, we know we have challenges moving forward. We've got to address EMT pay. We've got to take care of some physical concerns with the building. We've got to take care of some equipment concerns. We're working on that. We will get it figured out, and we want to make sure our ambulance service is sustainable now and in the future, so it's always there when the citizens of Richland County need it. So those are the, Mr. Pesh, anything else we wanted to add about any of those topics before we move into questions? Okay, so then we are ready for our question and answer time. We have a microphone placed out front there. Just a few things I want to go over before we get into this. It's item 8 on our agenda. It is question and answer time. We want to give as many people as possible the chance to ask questions. So we'd ask that you keep it to one question at a time. Then we'll let the next person come up and ask their question. Once we've been through everybody that wants to ask a question, we can go back to folks who have additional questions and give them more time if they want. We as a board will listen respectfully to your questions, and we'll give you the best answer we can. We ask that you listen respectfully to us as well. And we acknowledge there may be some questions we can't answer, some things you can't discuss in an open session. But we'll give you the best that we can give you. Our board rules on decorum apply. This is a county board session. Even if when we have strong feelings about things, we can keep things civil with each other. And this is a time for questions, not statements. We're not here to debate. We're not here to argue. We're here to ask and get answers. We will take questions from county residents. That's who we're reaching out to, our constituents. The residents of Richland County are the ones we want to have bring your questions to us. Again, we will do our best to answer it. And I would ask board members, we have meetings together where we get together and discuss and ask each other questions and interact with department heads and stuff. So this is citizen time. We will let them ask the questions and we'll get the answers to the best degree possible that we can. And I would encourage you, if we get to the end of the meeting and you still have questions left, feel free to reach out. You can contact Candace. I'm the board chair. You can contact me. You can contact your individual board member that represents you in your district. It's important for the county board to be engaged with the community, and we want to do that. We may not always have the answer for you. We'll try to find it. We may not always agree on things, but that's okay. We can still talk. We can still interact, and we still want your input because we represent you. And so with that, I don't think we have any predetermined order for questions. So those who are interested, the microphone is right there. And if you have a question, please do feel free to come forward. Thank you in advance to those willing to. Please go ahead and step up to the microphone. It's not easy to stand up in front of a big group of people with a microphone in front of you. So those willing to do it, thank you. I appreciate that.
My name is Daniel Gajdusek, a Richland Center resident. First question I have in my mind is, was there encryption?
Was there what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Encryption? Is that what Was there encryption? While we won't talk specifics about what our security practices were at the time, we can say there were practices in place and our practices were breached, unfortunately. So I know that's not the best answer, but that's a description of what happened. Yeah, we had security, but they got through it. Go ahead.
Mine is not basically a question, but it's a concern. I'm with the JAC, the Joint Ambulance Committee. And I guess since the transition with Darren leaving and that, I guess there's been a mixed feelings on where the committee is. We work with the county and usually we took any concerns to the county for like finances and that. But now we're told we're just an advisory group. Now, if you'd known 10 years ago, the county didn't want anything really to do with the ambulance. So this group got together. We, I think there's 17 of us in this committee, and we've, over the 10 years, gotten where we're at today. We have a building, EMTs, training. I think we've done a wonderful job to be pushed aside. So I guess my question to the county, where are we going? Are we still valuable?
First, to answer that direct question, yes, you are still valued. Do we need to sit down and have conversation about what the relationship looks like and how things work moving forward? Yes, we absolutely need to do that. So we will get that clarified. Okay. Thank you. Well, if the next person's taller, well, okay, there we go. We'll have to make an adjustment to the microphone, won't we?
Hello, Suzanne Fish from Richland Center. I received 3 letters, 2 in my name, one in my name, one my initials, and then someone I have no idea, but my address. All 3 letters are different on the line where it says what information was involved. The only thing in common in all 3 is my name and address. One letter asked about my financial number and routing number. That's the little one. That was the person, I didn't name my dog after that person. So I don't know who she is and where did that name come from with my address. The big one is, it covers it all. Your information includes your full name and phone number, address, bank, and our financial account number with routing number, clinical and treatment information, date of birth, health insurance carrier, health insurance member ID, and group number, medical record number. The second one didn't have the medical part. So why are there 3 different forms of why I got this? And where did this person who I have no idea, I've known who's lived in my house since 1963, and this person has never visited me. So where did that information come from?
Definitely a question to ask. I'll share a little bit personally before I let Candace share the official answer. I got multiple letters at my house too. One to David Turk, one to Dave Turk, one to the deceased former resident of the house I live in now. And so I understand that it's confusing. And as far as the letter itself, I had some of the same reactions when I first read it that you did, wondering what all this means. So for the official explanation, I'll let Candace tackle that.
So the way that it was explained to me by the provider, because this is a question I've answered several times over the past week, is that when they go through this data, it doesn't all read like a book. It's not all accurately lined up. It doesn't always make complete sense. And they did have to manually go through this data to determine what had been touched. And so in that process, there may be lines that didn't quite match. So they may have the first name correct and the address correct, or they may have the last name correct and the address correct. Or sometimes it may be a completely wrong name going to that address. But rather than try to pick and choose what they saw, they over notified. So if there was a question as to whether or not this was the same person, they notified all. And so that's why several of you are seeing letters that maybe don't apply to you. That someone with a wrong name or the wrong first name and the right last name. People that have had prior names, your maiden name, or even just an initial difference in the middle will get a separate letter for that. And the only answer that I have been able to get out of, those discussions is that they just were over notifying to try to capture anybody possibly that could have been affected. And so if you have letters that were sent to you and that person doesn't exist, or, it's someone you've never heard of, you can either dispose of those letters or you can return them to me. I do have a large stack of them, and I am holding on to those to then inform, the company that's handling it. As far as the content of the letter itself, they listed out all of the things that may have been, that doesn't mean that every single piece of that information was touched. It's a broad overview of what may have been touched. And unfortunately, we don't know exactly. I don't know that information. That company knows that information. They're the ones dealing in that. But there is no way for myself or any member of our staff to drill down and be able to explain those exact things. So that is the official answer. I know it's not the best answer, but it's the information that we have.
To the medical part, is that because years ago I went to county flu shot clinics where I had to dispose information? Is that where that came from, or is it my other medical business?
Honestly, we don't know.
What I can say is we have no affiliation with the hospital. We have no affiliation with that. I know some people have called and said, how would you have, we have no affiliation with that data. So it's nothing that touches your hospital data. Now, process of elimination in several of these conversations, when people have said, oh, I've never really been at the county, or, I've never really done business there. But then we've had a little more talking, and did you visit the Simon Center? Oh, I did. Maybe that's how. So if you went to a flu shot clinic, that is a very strong possibility that that's where that information, but again, can I pinpoint that? Do we know that directly? Absolutely, we don't. But seems like a likely way, seems logical.
If you're not involved with my other personal medical, and I have done flu shot clinics for years, that'd have to be it. Because this is just the county information breach, right?
Correct. There is no other entity that this touched. I know at one point there was an assertion that some local businesses may have been affected, and that's absolutely not true. This did not affect anything other than the county.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
You've been very patient. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank everybody for being here. Mine's a really quick, easy question. Does this information breach involve past employees, retired employees, or only current employees? Or who, do you understand the scope of the question?
Is it past employees, current employees? That it's not even all employees. So
it does not involve any past
it does
employees?
involve some people who have been employed by the county. It does involve some people who work for the county, but it's not just.
How far back we talking? I retired like 5, 6
honestly,
years
I have
ago.
no
Is that an
knowledge of
issue?
that. We don't know.
Could be, couldn't be. Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, sorry. It's yeah. Go ahead.
Holly Cisco, Town of Richland. Couple of questions. You hired an outside agency to investigate. What is the ballpark price of this service? It looks like it took a year. So what would the ballpark price be to the county and taxpayers?
So we have cyber security coverage. So we have insurance, and that insurance has covered the cost of this. Had we not had that insurance, it would be significant. That's also why, as people have asked questions about why weren't we notified sooner? Why didn't you say something earlier? Why, did this take so long? All of those things were guided by those experts and those legal teams. Part of ensuring that we maintain our cyber coverage is doing and following all of those recommendations as they were made, which we have also done. So the total cost to the county is our deductible, which isn't isn't a lot of money compared to the bills that I know I have seen come in from this. And so we were very fortunate. And that is also why we took all of their recommendations very seriously. The board has stepped up and purchased additional security measures this year to, do the best that we can to stop this from happening again. As we all know, it's an awful world we live in, and the people, the bad actors that do this stuff seem to always find a way around it. But we feel comfortable and confident now that we have all the safeguards in place that we can have to try to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future.
Was the FBI notified and were they of any use in the investigation?
Law enforcement was involved. The FBI, however, was not involved.
And you have no idea if the data breach was foreign or domestic?
That information is information we wouldn't discuss in a public forum.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Next up, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sarah Bodwin Hess. My first question also has to deal with the data breach. Could you confirm whether the data, information, or records were left unsecured, or was it a hack? Was the data or information left unsecured, or was it a hack?
The information was not unsecured.
And then at the time, what security standards were in place, like FedRAMP or anything like that?
I can't comment on that. We're not going to publicly give out that information, but we had all aspects that we thought would keep us safe at that time.
I do think that's important. I mean, I'm not asking what you have in place now, because that obviously could expose or somebody could compromise, but what was in place at that time is important, because if they weren't the standards that most county governments should have, that is important. We should know that.
And they were the standards that any other county government would have had. Yes.
The letters and this handout that we got say that it was an unauthorized individual. Was this person county employee, contractor, or somebody connected to the county?
We have not caught who it was, obviously. As they said in the letter, they have not identified the individuals that are responsible. So
if it is somebody that is connected to the county, like a county payroll or contractor, would they be fired?
I would guess so, yes.
As for the banking data that's listed in some of the letters, why is some of the banking data continuing to be retained? That's not the current standard to keep people's checking or credit cards usually.
Well, we handle a number of operations over at Human Services where people are receiving payments. We have a treasurer's office. We have a register of deeds office. We have data on numerous individuals. So those are things. And we also have retention requirements. So there are times where we must by law retain data for a specific period of time. So that's not an easy question to answer.
So at the time of the hack, did you retain people's credit card numbers? Not just saying that a payment was made from the credit card with the last four. Was it full credit card numbers or their full banking? Not current practices, but at the time.
I would have to ask departments I don't believe they do retain full credit card information, no.
So, and just going forward, I would recommend, or I would ask that you please not keep our full credit card or banking information. So usually you can just take a payment and then say the payment was made with verification of some sort, but not the full banking information.
Yep, understood.
And then going to your retention that you just mentioned. So there is minimum retention that's required for government records in the state of Wisconsin, but are the records, data, and information now being dispositioned when eligible rather than retaining for many more years past the eligible retention date?
I can't answer that right now, and we're at time. I'm sorry.
So that's a very important point, because if you keep our information much longer past the retention date that it's supposed to be at, that if there is some type of hack or data breach, that information could have been dispositioned a long time ago. That's really important if you're holding on to it for an extended period of time, past when it's eligible to be dispositioned. So thank you.
Yep. We appreciate the specificity of your questions, even though we couldn't answer a lot of it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Pat Werner, Buena Vista Township. On September 19th, I received my letter, and on the afternoon of September 19th, I called that number 833-215-3616, which is, the header on the letter said Richland County, Smithtown, New York. I got a person and I asked him what security got breached in that. He could not answer that. He read the letter that I received back to me, and I asked him where he was from. He was from the state of Georgia. In the process of that, I said, how do I go about protecting my security, which was on the page there of how to do it? He said, well, you have to have a code to get in to do that. And he said, I will send you the code. He said, the letter you received did not have a code. So what I am wondering here is, what do I have to do to protect my information and all? I called on the 20th. I called the administrator, which is in zoning, and left a message because she was not there, and I have not received a call back yet. So what is happening to you guys in Richland County?
The 800 number on there does go to a national call center. That's part of the service that this company provides. And they are supposed to respond to questions that people give. They have a list of frequently asked questions. And if there's a question they can't answer, they're supposed to take the information down and escalate it so that somebody does get back to you with an answer. We understand that that hasn't always been happening. That's a concern, and Candace has been addressing that with the company handling this, trying to get them to elevate to the standards they promised on the response. Now, as far as your question about specific steps to take to protect your information, I'm not a financial or cybersecurity expert. I'm not sure what to tell you. There are supposed to provide some guidance in how you work with, credit bureaus and things like that.
They do, but it says, he told me I had to have a code, and the code is not in the letter.
Right. Sorry.
So when we're done here, why don't you let me take a peek at that and I can advise you on what you need to do.
Okay, and then my second question on all of this is, did that happen at the same time that 911 got breached? Because we could not get our messages in EMS. It all got breached, and I called the sheriff and he said that the county got breached, and so we went 3 or 4 days without being able to get our messages from 911. We got our pages, but we had to call the county if we couldn't understand our pages and we wanted to get where we were going. Does that happen all at the same time?
The sheriff's in the back and he looks a little confused with that. He doesn't recall. I can't answer for the sheriff, but
It was down for about 3 days.
I know we've had some difficulties with 911 over time, but I don't think it was a breach situation.
Well, I called the sheriff's office and the dispatcher told me it was breach. So that's all I know.
Okay, well,
So that was for the paging, sorry.
Yeah,
So our 911 system was not breached. What it was the I am responding, the rip and run that comes through our RMS system and then sends you guys the information as EMTs as to what the call is. That's what the failure was. It was not a failure at 911.
Okay, it was not that because the dispatch said it was different. So, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
all right. Other questions? Go ahead.
The cybersecurity incident, what a mess. Who's going to help the people impacted? I feel like a non-swimmer that's been tossed in the Wisconsin River, and as I'm struggling, you're throwing me a 6-page letter on how to swim? And I've worked for federal and state grants for 25 years, so I can usually do some complicated deciphering of information. but not everyone can do that. Will the county provide help stations where appointments can be made and a knowledgeable person help folks impacted? Doesn't the HSS building have plenty of room for this? Or we got a former campus that isn't being used, right? I'm aware there's some other business who accept responsibility for computer hacks, like some financial institutions, and they personally help their clients. It takes a lot of our time to fix this error. I've called a number several times, held for 20 minutes, and then I've been dropped. How many times do folks have to go through this? So what are you doing to help the folks? I know if my father was alive, he would not be able to do this. What are you doing to help people? And again, we've just heard some people that have been up, and I've also called Candace and not received any information back.
So we are helping everyone that comes in, and, I have had probably 300 calls. So I have tried to return calls. Not everybody has an answering machine. So if you don't have an answering machine and I haven't been able to leave you a message, I apologize for that, but I have been returning all calls in a timely manner, to the best of my ability. And so if some of you have been missed, I do sincerely apologize. It is definitely not intentional. As I have said, I've had probably hundreds of conversations in the past week with many, many people, and many, many people have actually come in. There were people on the phone that said, I don't really know how to do this. I said, come on in and I will help you. And I have done that. We have explained exactly how to get enrolled, and we've even assisted people in getting enrolled. So if someone needs assistance, we are more than happy to do that. You just need to give us a call and we'll either schedule a time for you to come in, or we will walk you through whatever. We'll meet you where you're at and help you in the best that we can. Absolutely.
And again, we're aware that sometimes the toll-free number doesn't give the best help or have the best performance. That's a concern we continue to follow up on. So, other questions?
Mine is also quite short.
Okay.
I had seen this in the Richland Observer article, and it's on your sheet of things you handed out earlier.
Could you step just a little closer to the microphone so everybody can hear? Thank you.
This does mention the complimentary credit monitoring, which I don't recall being in the letter, but it does not explain how do we access that.
And that's something not everybody got offered.
Is that available to anybody that got a letter?
Not everyone got offered the credit monitoring. It did depend on which of your information was breached. So there are certain letters that say that they give you steps to monitor, to put a fraud alert or a freeze. There are others where it is a complimentary credit monitoring service. Some are for 1 year and some are for 2 years. And that is, again, based on the recommendation of our cybersecurity professionals and based on whatever data they know of yours was touched. I also want to emphasize that to this day, none of anyone's information has been used for any nefarious purpose. They have been watching, they have been monitoring, and to date, nothing has been utilized and nothing has shown up anywhere, which again doesn't mean it won't. And I still encourage everyone to take all of those precautions. But it is comforting at this point to know that nothing has been utilized in a nefarious way.
Continue to be monitored. I mean, at this point, and how long going forward will that be monitored?
So now that the notifications have been out, the credit monitoring is up to you as individuals. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have someone who hasn't asked a question yet interested? Come forward, please. We'll get back to you, I promise, but. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Cindy Hammold, Richland Township. It's really curious to me how random the information came back. For instance, one of our grandchildren never born here, never lived here, only 7 years old. And I had noticed on I have an app where I get an email every morning telling me what letters are going to be delivered or what my mail's going to be. And I had seen where his name was on there as well as an exchange student that we had had many years ago. But the letters never showed up in my mailbox that day. So I went to the post office and I asked what happened to them or why they never came to the mailbox. And they said because my postman probably knew they didn't live there, so they were returned to the company. Now, I don't know what kind of a letter my 7-year-old grandson who lives in South Carolina got, or what to even go and tell his parents to watch for, or what to tell the exchange student in another country, what he needs to be aware of. And if it was something like Simon's, I mean, I can't figure out how they got my grandson's name, because if it was Simon's, we've taken all of our grandchildren there. One of our children, born and raised in Richland County, got a letter, and the other 3 did not. So it's really kind of random. And I would also add that this weekend, I got a letter from my credit card monitoring service that I pay for on a monthly basis, which said my social security number was found on a dark website. So I'm a little concerned.
You're not alone in confusion. I can tell you that for sure, because many other people have talked about the same kind of thing you have, wondering how notifications are related. And we wonder the same thing because we can't see a pattern either. So as Candace said earlier, she's been able to piece together from some people that Simon's did seem to be one potential avenue. And you heard some discussion here tonight about other possibilities. We don't know for sure how. And we don't know for sure how people that seemingly aren't related are linked for this data breach. And then you mentioned, notification, and I know other people have gotten a similar notification about their information being on the dark web. I can tell you personally, I've had 3 or 4 credit notification letters in the last couple years about breaches at various, whether one was an insurer, one was a financial company, so there are multiple things going on out there that might have been a source of your info getting to the dark web. It's not necessarily from this, but it could be, I suppose. We don't know for sure. So that's a lot of talk for not giving you an answer. I'm sorry.
Is there any way to get those letters that never got delivered back so I can even give guidance?
I assume if they got returned to the company, they have a gigantic bin or something somewhere they throw all those in. We could certainly see about asking the company about that if there is some way, but and you're again not the only one who's had different experiences depending on who your letter carrier is. Some of them have just been delivered. So.
Michelle Elfers, Richland Center. I was just wondering if there's any way you could really simply clarify what kinds of categories, that was breached, because I'm hearing like Simon's information, maybe this or maybe that. I mean, when you say the county had a breach, is there any way you can kind of give us a feel for what departments in that would have been impacted so we can have a better idea of what information of our own might be out there? I mean, anything that's county related?
It's possible. And the things we've talked about are just things we've been able to piece together by talking to people. It's not any kind of official notification. We don't know for sure. It was a county data breach. So any data that was in the county systems somewhere that somebody could have gotten to is a possible source. But that's the words the cybersecurity folks keep using: possible and potential and stuff like that.
So the county has one computer system and then all the different departments are so interlinked that a breach into the county breached all those potential, like Simon's and the county clerk or whatever.
The county has multiple systems, and some might have been involved, some might not. I don't think we have a breakdown on that necessarily, do we? No. But
'Cause I
again,
too got letters from exchange students that lived with me
Yep.
and had no clue what to tell them either. And,
Yep.
Also just I really haven't had the time or energy to deal with some of the
Right.
stuff. And I know it's important to deal with.
Mhm.
And so it's just like overwhelming, even if you do know
Yeah.
how to deal with it.
yep, agreed, agreed. Yes, go ahead.
Kevin Hoffman from Sextonville. So I also got a letter from my minor child, he's 8, saying that his bank account information was compromised for some reason on there. I don't know where the county would have a minor's bank account information. I couldn't figure that one out. I also got a thing on my credit report that my security number was on the dark web just a couple weeks ago. So I guess, is there gonna be anybody held accountable for this? I mean, it's federal crime to break into a server. So is somebody being held responsible? Is their board gonna hold anybody accountable? What exactly happened? You guys aren't answering much.
We don't know what exactly happened. That's what the cybersecurity people are trying to track down.
So
And
I
again,
also-
that's,
I also called the number on the
Yeah.
form that you guys gave us, and I asked them to identify themselves. They couldn't even do that, and they wanted my information. I said, I'm not giving you guys any more of my information. Who are you guys?
Yep.
So this company that you guys hired to do this, what is the name of the company? Because they couldn't even provide their name.
well, and I hear your frustration. Thank you for
I've
standing up
worked
and
really
expressing.
hard on my credit for the last 3
Yep.
years, and for this to affect it is kind of crappy.
I agree. We didn't pick the company. That's an insurance thing. So, I forget do we know it's on the letter. The name of the company is on there. I don't recall what it is at the top. I know there were issues with, like, the letter didn't have an actual signature on it, and there were things that were definitely confusing about the whole process. What they did, in my best understanding, correct me if I'm wrong in this statement, they took the data that was in the county system and they painstakingly had to go through all this stuff and figure out what got touched. When they got to the best conclusion they could reach about what was involved and the people that were involved, they ran that against the U.S. Postal Service database to try to figure out who might be where that they could notify. So it's not that we gave them all your information. It's based on the analysis of the data that they were working with to determine who potentially was most likely to be affected by this. And again, it's got those qualifying words on it, potentially and possibly. I could not tell you that. I don't know details of county computer systems, so. Yeah, I share your confusion on that one, so I don't have an answer for you.
As I said earlier, the listing on those letters doesn't mean all of that information was accessed. It was a potential. So if your child doesn't have any bank information, then most likely they don't have that. There may have been another category. No, I doubt he's got an account now. This didn't create, we're not creating additional data here. This is just the data that they've identified that was already in the system that was potentially touched. And again, it doesn't mean that all of that stuff was touched. It could have just been a name and a date of birth. It could have been, a name and an address. So those categories are broad. They didn't send a letter to every single person saying this is exactly what was touched of yours. They created a broad scope letter. Yeah, and again, we have no way of knowing that. We obviously don't have access to all of this information, and we, don't go through all of it. So that's left with the cybersecurity experts, and that's what they have done.
Well, the experts are the company that are handling this. And the way I try to tell people is, okay, if I had a heart attack, I'd want to see a cardiologist. I want to see an expert who will give me guidance on what I'm supposed to do. This is what you do when you have a cybersecurity incident. You work with experts because it's insurance coverage. They brought in the people and we're doing the best we can with what they told us to do. We don't have answers for everything, and there are some things they will not release for security concerns. So best answer I can give you. Sorry. Next, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Richwood Township. I think this is on a lot of people's minds tonight. What is the county's deductible?
$10,000 was our deductible.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep. And I would say, as Candace said, we've also invested some additional funds in extra security precautions. That wasn't insurance coverage for the incident. That was an investment we had to make in response to it. So go ahead.
Hi, my name's Liz. I am an aspiring cybersecurity professional, so I've been watching this with a keen interest. I realize that you may not be able to speak to specifics about this, but if you are able to share any more details about what will be done in the future to prevent an incident like this happening again. I thought you said something about increased insurance protections. Will there be anything else? Increased funding, staffing for the IT department, upgrades to systems such as that?
Well, what we know and can say is, yeah, we made changes. We made some upgrades in our security. Obviously, we're not going to give details about what it was because we don't want to tell anybody how to get through it. But we did make some changes in that regard at the recommendation of the professionals. So other folks have questions. I don't see anybody else coming, so you can do your second one now. Go ahead.
I'm going to try to phrase this very carefully.
Okay.
Since you've told us that the FBI was not involved or not contacted, and that you can't tell us whether it's a foreign or domestic, I'm sure you're familiar with the Patriot Act. And after 2001, after 9/11, the Patriot Act allowed the FBI to come into your home without a warrant and look at all of your personal papers, and then maybe get a warrant. Now, I'm not trying to create a conspiracy, but I am leery as to how you are protecting our Fourth Amendment rights.
Okay, I'm not sure where exactly the question was going. Our cybersecurity experts are investigating. The question earlier was who's going to be held accountable. Well, if they ever are able to determine where it came from and who did it, they might be able to hold someone accountable in that regard. I don't know how they do that. I'm not a cybersecurity person. I have no idea how that works. But from everything they've told us, that's a very difficult proposition. So I don't know if they ever will be successful in figuring out who or how or when or where, I mean.
Is this going to be another thing like lawfare?
I don't foresee that even being a comparable concern, to be honest. I don't know if law enforcement is actively involved in the investigation right now. It's still with the cybersecurity people, right?
The cybersecurity people notified law enforcement. They're dealing with that on their end. It's not being dealt with at our local level.
Why wasn't the FBI involved?
If that's what the recommendation was from our cybersecurity individuals, they would have escalated it. But again, we trust them to do what is best for the county. They're the experts. They know the best practices, and we have followed everything that they have recommended that we do.
Does Richland County share any information in that database with any other entities, or does it specifically stay in Richland County? Everybody shares stuff, so.
That's a great question. I don't believe that it impacted anything other than us.
Okay, so just recently I got another letter. This is actually from California. It's Change Healthcare, and it says, Notice you have a data breach. I've never been to California. Well, I have, long time ago, didn't see a doctor, didn't see anybody, but it's a healthcare provider.
I got the same one.
You got the same one.
I got the same one.
It's in Chinese, it's in Spanish, and
Yeah.
it's in whatever other.
Yes.
So how do they get information? on
That's a
me?
much larger, that has to have been from some sort of a medical provider, is what my guess is too, because I didn't know what Change Healthcare was, but they're affiliated with a lot of medical providers. And so I believe that that instance was related to something like
Not
that.
related to the.
It's not
to
related
Richland County.
to Richland County, no.
Okay. No, it says, West Sacramento, California. You got one too.
Okay, we do have a couple of folks online sending questions, so if you give me just a second, I'll address those and we'll take yours. So I just got to make it bigger because my eyes are the best, so. This person said, I've only lived a very short time and used almost no services. How do I limit the data that is held of mine by both the hospital and the county's Health and Human Services? I don't think we have any specific guidance on that. And certainly not involving the hospital. We're not affiliated, not connected with that data sharing at all. So I'm sorry, I don't have any point of reference to give you information on that. Let's get to the next question here. Oops. This person asked, it took a year to not know. We don't know how. Then are you ever going to protect this from happening in the future? We've kind of answered that a little bit, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Candace? No, we'll do the best we can. We've increased our security measures for now, following recommendations of professionals. And can we guarantee it'll never happen in the future? Nobody can, because as we've been talking about, there are other data breaches that happen. We've all got notifications from different types of providers. And, it could be something as simple as, swiping a credit card at a gas pump that has a skimmer on it versus a full-blown data breach of an institution. And so, as it concerns county data security, we're making our best efforts to strengthen and reinforce to try to limit the likelihood it will ever happen again. Can we guarantee it won't? There's no way to guarantee, unfortunately. So.
I just want to let you know at the twice in 1 year now with my work with Hartung Brothers, company credit card, BMO Bank, that has been hacked, just ordering stuff online. So it's everywhere. And unfortunately, they have to issue me a new card. It starts out very small. These 3 charges were at the University of California back in August on my company credit card, nothing to do with anything I was doing. So beware of your own credit cards as well, besides what's happening with this. Just a little FYI.
We had another online question come in asking if the notifications that happened were in compliance with time limits specified in state laws and everything.
And the answer to that is yes. We followed all notification procedures and best practices as recommended, again, by the cybersecurity experts. We also looked at all of our contracts, anybody that we needed to work with or notify, and ensured that that was done. There were some after the fact that we became aware of. And one of the things that we are doing, I just got back from the WCA conference, as Andy said, and I had an opportunity to speak with a lot of other counties. And not surprisingly, this has happened to many counties around us this year and in the past year. So we talked about what are they doing and what are their best practices. And one of the things that we're going to do is put it in a continuing operations plan. A COOP plan, we normally think of those for natural disasters or, some major active shooter events or things like that. But I can tell you when something like this happens, your business is crippled. And so we're going to look at putting a continuity of operations plan together for God forbid this should ever happen again. we now know what our best practices are, and we can utilize those experts that we have in order to mitigate any sort of situation like this going forward as well. And we will be doing that because we want to make sure we're the best prepared we can be at all times to protect all of you. And so we're going to look at any way we can be better and do better going forward.
Other questions? Come on. Yep. Go ahead.
Nancy Clary from Ithaca Township. I received 2 letters, one in my husband's name and one of my name. And I was reading through them, and there is one page where I thought, these paragraphs are not the same size in one letter as they are in the other letter. So I went to my copy machine and made a copy so that I could follow them through. And so the confusion comes up as to exactly what can a person do, because one is a bunch of mumble jumble compared to the other one. So I don't know how to get a hold of you.
We'll let Candace get that information to you.
So at the end of the FAQ document, my phone number is listed. It's right on there. It's right on there for you, and you can get a hold of me and you can bring in your letters and we'll take a look for you. Or if you want to, after the fact, I can chat with you as well. I'm happy to do that.
Security of anybody's credit is very valuable to each individual.
Absolutely.
And I don't like monkeying with 3 different credit bureaus. The idea of it is a little overwhelming. And I just.
And to be clear on that, you only need to notify one credit bureau and it carries to all of them. You don't have to call all 3 of them separately.
But
still,
you
I can
didn't
help
see
you.
my second page, because one of them says just what you said and the other one says, no, you just need to do one.
All right, I'll take a peek at it for you.
Dave?
Yes.
I read one. We have several from online. I'll just read them to you.
I'm sorry?
We have several from online. I can read them to you.
Okay, if you,
And-
we'll let our live person ask a question here first. We'll deal with that, and then I'll come over and we'll.
Thank you. Chris Storr, I'm a resident of Richland Center. This isn't more of a question, it's more as for the audience, some answers. I know what happened is very, very unfortunate. I got 5 letters out of 6 of our family. Didn't really pay too much attention to it until I got a notification from my credit card that my data was breached. So I'm going to say to you, the audience, be careful. If our information was breached, you're going to be inundated with scammers. Somebody's going to try and take advantage of that situation. So I got the notification from my credit card. So instead of clicking in that email to call this number, whatnot, I called the number on back of the card and talked to my credit card company directly. They gave me a different number to call. And in the meantime, while I'm on hold for 44 minutes, I decided I would just go out to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, the 3 credit bureaus, to each of their websites and put a fraud alert on my own. It took me all afternoon, I'm not gonna lie, it takes some time, but it's out there for a year. So I'm just asking you to be diligent. It's your money, it's your credit, it's your life. Take control. Call, email directly to the 3 credit bureaus. You have to be an advocate for yourself. So please be careful of scams. People will email you and they can spoof it to look like it's your own credit card. So please take that into consideration and get the number on the back of your card, or Google it and look them up yourself. Don't trust the emails that you get. Thank you.
Good advice. And watching your cards for unauthorized purchases, watching your bank accounts for unauthorized transactions, putting that credit freeze on is just generally good advice too, even in absence of an incident like this. So we have a couple more questions over here and then we'll get to you. So what do we got? This one, okay. I'm interested in these so-called experts. Who actually chose the experts? It just seems that after an exhaustive investigation that lasted nearly a year, we should actually have more information at this point. I am personally disappointed in that aspect of this incident. Well, we've talked before about how we got involved with the folks that we're involved with as far as the cybersecurity experts. It was invoked by our insurance company and is part of the whole response. They're not the only ones we're involved with, but again, it is complying with the recommendations that they give us to preserve our coverage for this type of response. Did I hit everything, Candace? Okay. I think those are the main points on that. So did you have others, Barb? One more? Okay, let me get over there and take a quick look at that. Thank you for doing this. It's easier on the computer than it was on your phone. Okay, why aren't reps from the cybersecurity company presenting to answer questions? Are they out of state? How are you communicating with them? They are out of state. They are in various places probably because so many people work virtually now, and especially cyber people work a lot virtually. They don't do presentations. They're all about the security work themselves. We have been able to send them questions, and that's where the document came from that we passed out tonight. That's their responses to the questions. They don't do interviews. They don't do, live meetings, things like that. So would that have been nice to have somebody here like that? Sure, it would have been, but apparently they don't do that. So, okay, go ahead.
My name is Lori Repsummer. I do not live in Richland County. I live in Grant County. I have received a letter as well. There is other people that live in Muscadet as well myself. And it's not just Richland County. And I am very angry that somebody has gotten possibly into my credit and into my social security number. I do not like it. I'm angry.
I don't blame you. And that's something we found. There are people that don't live in Richland County that have gotten notifications. Again, we're not sure exactly what the connection is. So, but it has happened. Go ahead.
My name's Terry McGraw, Eagle Township, Richland County. I just would like to echo what this other lady said. We've had a credit freeze on our credit for 10 years. We get letters daily. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's actually one of your national security worries. And it's just makes sense to be prudent. I recalled to make sure I had a freeze on our accounts. It took me a half hour. They were there. You could put a fraud alert on, which does last for a year, but your freeze is there indefinitely until you lift it. If you need to get credit, it's a pain, it is, but you're safe. And I know this is unsettling, but it's happening everywhere all the time, not just Richland County. So, and I thank you for this meeting, your work in being transparent.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Other folks with questions? Hi, go ahead.
My name is Nancy. I'm from Richland Center. How concerned do I have to be that I got, the letters that I got in my name? I'm not that concerned. I also have my credit frozen for a long time. That's not an issue. But I did get one with another first name and my last name, almost like it's a fake person. Should I be concerned that somebody has been, do I need to try and monitor that this person isn't using my?
No, as we said before, the art of lining up all the data is not an exact science. It doesn't read like a book. And so as they said, if they had stuff match up, they just over notified. They're not in the business of creating fake identities. This is the company that we have hired to.
But this is not a name that's associated with our family on my
and it may
husband's
not be.
side or my side. I mean, that first name is not,
It may not be,
Okay.
and that's okay. As we said earlier, you
Okay.
can just go ahead and dispose of the letter.
okay,
And that's all you need to do. Or you can return it to us. I've had some people mail them back to me, either way.
yeah, that
Um,
was my main concern was who is this other person like kind of hanging out of the county that, has nothing to do?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions from folks? Anybody else have a question? Sure, come forward. Go ahead.
I'm going to change the topic up, and I'm not sure if this information is correct, so help me with this.
Okay.
I've been hearing that there is the possibility of the county considering leasing a 2024 vehicle for the ambulance director. Now, I've commuted out of the county for 25 years. My position covered 8 counties. The last personal vehicle I had for the last decade, I had over 200,000 miles. I knew when I accepted the position, work travel would be in my personal vehicle, would be required. I joke I spent more time in my vehicle than I have with my spouse, but it's probably true. So was a leased vehicle to use for the work of the ambulance director part of the hiring agreement, or did the ambulance director accept the position knowing that they would have to use their own personal vehicle? And that brings up more questions. How many vehicles does Richland County lease? For what purposes, and what is the annual cost to us?
Okay, all good questions. I will tell you the big question first, how many vehicles do we have? That's something we've been talking about. We need to get a good inventory down across all our departments and get a handle on that, because owning a vehicle costs money, whether it's maintenance, insurance, whatever it is. The issue of the vehicle you specifically mentioned, now that is a shared response vehicle that's being contemplated. Nothing's been acted on for sure yet. But it would be between emergency management and the ambulance service. So it wouldn't be just for the ambulance. And it is not appropriate for an emergency manager to use a personal vehicle to respond to official events. So that is part of the reason it's being considered. Mike, was there a specific thing you wanted to share about that?
So thank you for bringing up that question. I've seen that the story of this vehicle certainly kind of morph into something different. So this was originally discussed in open meeting, I believe, back in July. So the goal of this replacement vehicle was that the ambulance service, the ambulance department, needed a replacement response vehicle. The Department of Emergency Management also needed a replacement. So what the goal was is to, again, with the goal being to eliminate short-term borrowing as much as possible as a county. My solution to that problem, combine 2 vehicles into one, and do it as a leasing option. Therefore, there isn't short-term borrowing. The upfront cost isn't there. Do you pay a little bit more over the term of lease? Absolutely. It's not a perfect solution, but it's the most fiscally responsible one in which I could come up with. The other point of that being is the plan for this vehicle is for it to be staffed 24/7 in county by a chief, assistant chief, or captain of emergency services. So not only would they be available as a third person, but once we upgrade our service level to paramedic, it would be a paramedic fly car available to the entire county. It would be an emergency management response vehicle with an on-call emergency manager in county 24/7. We are also helping fulfill the role of deputy coroner within the county, as that is a department that has also had a need. So at no point in my hiring process did I request a take-home vehicle. I do not use county vehicles to commute back and forth, and that is not the intent of this vehicle. So by no means does the county fund any of my fuel mileage or anything of that nature to commute home to my home address. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Mike. And the response vehicle that they're currently using is a retired squad car from the sheriff's department that has had multiple maintenance issues, unfortunately. So they're getting by with it. But there at one time was a pickup truck that was the emergency government director's vehicle that has failed and is going to be salvaged, unfortunately. So it is an issue we're trying to resolve. And this was one potential method of being able to do that. Other questions? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Pat Werner again. On the emergency vehicle and how about these townships that are not covered by Richland County? Do they have to pay taxes towards this new vehicle and stuff?
There would be a mixed funding stream to pay for a mixed-use vehicle. Part of the funding would come from emergency management, which does serve the entire county. The other part would come from the ambulance service fund. Is the arrangement that's been discussed. Again, this hasn't been acted on yet. This is still under consideration.
I know it's been for the last 4 or 5 years about the ambulance getting out of the county and being self-sustaining, so to speak. You know what I mean? But for the last 50-some years, my taxes has went to help pay for the ambulances, and we have our own ambulance in our own area. So this was it. I went through this argument with Fred Clary many times over.
It does go back a
50
ways,
years.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. You're right, that discussion does go back a ways. You know, our system is probably not ideal the way it's set up now, but it's what we have to make it function. There was discussion years ago, and I remember when I first got on the board, about the ambulance service possibly moving to an ambulance district or various other approaches, and that didn't happen. So it is still functioning the way it has been for a while. We need to address operational concerns moving forward to make sure it continues to function. And as far as looking at how it serves various areas of the county, that may be something we wind up discussing in the future. We'll see.
hey, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions folks have? Do we have any more online, Barb? No?
Comment about how the lease, short-term borrowing.
Anyone else with a question? Again, I want to thank all of you who came forward. Thank you for engaging with us. Thank you for discussing with us face to face. We really appreciate it. Again, I know it's not easy, a room full of people, a microphone, you know, people, cameras and everything coming in. So thank you for your willingness to come and talk with us. You know, if we get to a point where we need to do this again in the future, it's something we'd look at doing again in the future, because we want to be engaged and responsive to our constituents. Thank you for your interest in government. Thank you for your passion for Richland County. And thank you for attending here tonight. We do. Yeah. And just, nobody asked about it, but you know, we got that report on the campus property and the other properties. We'll be having a campus reconfiguration committee in first, second week of October, somewhere in there. We've been looking ahead on the calendar, and we'll start our discussions about, okay, what are our next steps? We do know that there were some surprise provisions placed on the release of the $2 million that the legislature passed. Surprise provisions that would involve a county accepting the $2 million, releasing the university system from all liability and releasing all claims against university system, and providing documentation of that effect to WEDC before they'd give us the money. So that has complicated things, is a short way to say it. So we'll have to address some of these things moving forward. We'll try our best to figure it out. All right. So on our agenda, after question and answer, we move to item number 9, board. Mr. Manning motions to adjourn. Mr. Gill seconds the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, board members. Thank you, staff, for being here. Thank you, MIS, for making this happen. Appreciate it. And again, thank you all for coming.